What's going on, guys? This is Gene Jensen, and the conditions are tough. What is up with this fall thing? It's not even fall. I mean, it's supposed to be fall, but it's not fall. But the water temperature is still in the 80s. The air temperature is still in the 90s. It's basically summer. The bass are wanting to move. It's just crazy, and it's hard to catch fish. So in this video, I'm going to do a knowledge dump. And at the same time, I'm going to try to catch fish on a lake I've never been on before. How about that? I'm crazy. I teach all these things about fall transition. You know, it's late September, getting into October. The bass are moving out of their summer haunts into the fall pattern, blah, 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 blah. Well, Mother Nature had a different story. It is hotter than blue blazes out here. It's the water temperature is still in the 80s, and I want to have it down into the 70s. The air temperature during the day is up in the mid 90s. So basically, it's still summer, but these bass want to move up for fall transition. So let's figure them out. So the first thing I do when I get to a lake, and this lake doesn't have a topo map, so that's where this Ray Marine element really comes in handy, because I'm able to scan across points and drops and things like that, and I'm able to make a topo map of it. But it takes a while, and I really honestly don't have time to do that. But I could if I had time. If I had a week to be able to zigzag around here, I could find some really good spots. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at points. And because we're kind of getting into the fall, and the leaves are starting to change, and the angle of the sun's a little bit different and things like that, these bass are starting to move, it seems like. And so I'm going to check the mouths of all of the major creeks. I don't expect to see them further back than that, but mainly because, well, it ain't fall yet. So another thing I've noticed about this lake, just skimming across it since I got to the boat ramp, there's not a whole lot of bait fish, not what I'm used to seeing, and what I should expect to see in a lake this big with this kind of quality of water. But it's a new lake. This is called what's it called? Hard Labor Creek Reservoir. It's been open for about 1.5 years. I don't know how many years they've been filling it, but it took about 3 or 4 years to fill it, I think. But pull up on a point in the mouth of a pocket, and there's just trees all the way out to 15 feet deep, because obviously as it was filling up, those, you know, it took 2-3 years to fill up, the trees grew along the bank. Well, they're all just, you know, baby pine trees is what it is. And so just gonna kind of motor around, and I'm gonna stop when I see bait, and I'm gonna stop when I see fish, and I'm just kind of look around. But I always hit the points first, and then I'll go back and I'll hit into the pockets. But especially the points on the outside of pockets, I might hit those. But right now I'm looking at predominant points, the ones that stick out the furthest, and I'm going to fish the outside edge of the trees or the bushes. I don't know if they'd be there yet or not. They might be up shallow. I don't know. But anyway, I'm gonna talk you through it. I might talk more than I catch. Who knows? All right, so I didn't bring any deep diving crankbaits, which is okay, because they're not really that good in trees, in bushes and brush and that kind of stuff underwater. So I've got a Strike King. This is a 1.5, but it's a deep diving square bill. You can see how the bill is square, just like that. And what that square bill does is it will deflect off of cover a lot better, so I can actually crank it through those trees and not get hung as much. It dives to 8, maybe 9 feet. I might be able to get it down to 9 feet deep. But I'm just going to work. I'm going to backlash is what I'm going to do. But I'm going to work the outside edge of these trees. So let me figure out where my loop is. There we go. That one wasn't that bad. I'll be a little bit more careful with my cast this time. There we go. I run my bait casters a little bit looser than most people. And when I forget about that, is when I backlash. Alright, so with this square bill, I'm fishing it on a medium moderate action rod. I think this is a 6'10". Yep, 6'10" medium moderate. This is the new Envy cranking rods, and they are amazing. But anyway, 7:3 to 1 gear ratio reel, and 12-pound fluorocarbon, and I'm just casting it out. And if I'm not hitting anything, I'm going to do like a start-stop retrieve. And as you can see right here, it's just kind of just mess around with the retrieve. I want to get it down as deep as I can. I'm just kind of fan casting this point, trying to hit those trees. When I'm set up at this angle, the point kind of sticks. I'll turn the camera, but you're going to be right in the sun. Point sticks right out here, and I'm kind of throwing across the top of it, mainly because of light angle. You know, if I set up anywhere and the wind's blowing this direction, I'm anchored down in 15 feet of water. But if I was to change, the sun would be jacked up in the camera, and I'd be at a bad angle with the wind blowing and everything else. So I just kind of set right here, just because I'm making a video. If I wasn't making a video, I'd be on the other side. Now, if you remember in my fall fall transition video, I talked about the bass moving into the inside cut or the inside turn of a point. So I've got this big point sticking way out. Well, right here is an inside turn. You got the bank that comes along here, and then it comes out to the point. Well, I'm going to be fishing this area, but I'm not going to be fishing as shallow as I will in a few weeks when the water temperature drops. I'm going to be out here 10, 15 feet deep, fishing that little pocket just to see if there's fish out here. And then I'm going to move around to the very tip of the point and try to hit the brush piles at the tip of the point. It's just different. It's not what you expect this time of the year. And bass don't read the books. They don't read the rule books. They don't watch my videos. They go off of conditions. And so all the videos that you've watched of mine, or if you're just getting into watching them, understand that bass don't make, they don't read the rule books. And so learn how to fish from the conditions. Pay more attention to the conditions than perhaps maybe the time of year, because they really do. They adjust themselves to conditions. The bait fish do everything else. Water temperature, water clarity, everything else. So anyway, hope that makes sense. And I am not hitting anything with this bait. I wonder if there's not any trees growing on this point. Alright, so I made several casts with my crankbait, fan casting around there, and I did not hit a single tree. So I'm going to grab something that fishes on the bottom. Just a Texas rig, got about a 1/4 ounce weight on it. Pegged, and whenever I'm fishing brush, I like to peg my weight, especially shallow brush. I want to keep that weight as close to the hook as I possibly can. Now here is when I'm just trying to feel what's on the bottom. Okay, if I catch a fish, great, it's a bonus. But here's where I'm trying to educate myself about what's going on down there. And if you notice, I do this with or without a fish finder. I want to know, I want to feel what's down there. I want to feel if there's trees or whatever. There's a little something. It's kind of a muddy bottom. Yeah, the reason I say it's a muddy bottom is because I don't feel any, it doesn't feel hard. I don't feel any resistance as I'm dragging it on the bottom. And that's typically what mud feels like. If I felt resistance like that right there, I'm going to shake it a little bit and try to figure out what that is. And it easily came over top of whatever I started shaking it on. So it was probably just a little indentation in the bottom or something like that. It didn't feel like anything hard. Sensitive rods are critical, good line, everything else, but just experience alone really does help out a lot. Now I'm bringing it, still dragging it out of the bottom. I thought I was bringing it up a stick. All right, so now there's a stick, and the reason I know that is it feels a little bit harder, a little bit more resistance, and also when I let the line go slack, it falls back down. In other words, the line falls a little bit further, and that's it. I brought it up to the tree limb, and then I let go, and it fell down on the back side of that tree limb, and it lets me know that I'm on a tree. And what I do is I bring it up to that limb, and I don't pop it over immediately. I shake it, and then it accidentally popped over, but that's okay. And then once it pops over, I drop back down to the slack line to let it fall. And this is how I work brush piles deep, especially with a Texas rig. I want to work it over each limb and let it fall down. Over each limb and let it all fall down. But when it gets up to that limb, before I pull it over, I want to shake it. Or at least attempt to. There we go. Because if those suckers, if the bass are tight in those brush piles, just shaking it. I'm just barely shaking it. Just shaking it on that limb. Looks like a bait fish feeding off of stuff that's on that limb. It's an awesome opportunity for that bass to ambush. So it's going to. One of the coolest bites I ever had once was I got a lipless crankbait stuck on a stick or a log or something. I was shaking it, and it was, I mean, it was jammed on there. Yeah, I was shaking it, and all of a sudden, boom! I mean, just about took the rod out of my hand. A bass took the lipless crankbait off of the limb for me, and it was about an 8.5 pounder. That was awesome. It was in a little bitty John boat, so it was a fun little fight. But that kind of stuff happens. They love it when you sit there and shake it on the limb. Your automatic temptation is to just, it's hung. Okay, I got to get it unhung. Man, no, leave it on there. Shake it a little bit. All right, so a lot of guys, especially the new guys, you always worry about, what's a bite and what's not a bite. What is, the blah, blah, I hear it all the time. What does a bite feel like? Or I'm always setting the hook on grass. I'm always setting the hook on sticks. Let me tell you what a bite feels like. It pulls back. 9 times out of 10, a bite is you can feel it. The bait did something that you didn't cause it to do. And so if you're dragging it and you feel something, more than likely it's not a bite. But if you're holding it still and tunk, something hits it, or it's falling and all of a sudden it stops, or something different, it hits it. And the way I normally teach it is get out there in the shallow water with your whatever bait, with a Texas rig with a 1/4 ounce weight, just like what I've got right now. Get in the shallows where you can see stuff and start making casts to those things and dragging your bait through it so you can see what you're dragging through. And work it just like you would deep, and see what everything feels like. See what a rock feels like. See what a stick feels like. See what grass feels like. Remember that. And as you're fishing deep, anything that feels different, you're like, oh man, what was that? The best thing to do, I know people say hook sets are free, but the best thing to do is to hold your rod up at about 10 o'clock and hold it still for a second and see if something is alive on the other end that's causing it to move a little bit more, and you'll feel it. You just pull your line somewhat tight and you'll feel whether there's a fish or not. And with experience, you'll get to the point where you'll know exactly what a bite is. You can subconsciously know it's a bite and set the hook. All right, so another question I get asked a lot, which is probably one of my, so another question I get asked a lot is, when do I change? When do I change baits, or when do I change locations or positions or anything else? And it's kind of simple. Bass fishing is a lot about confidence. And when I lose confidence in a bait, I change the bait up. Or another reason why I'll change the bait up is if I come to something that bait I could currently have in my hand is not very efficient at catching fish out of. So for instance, if I'm throwing like a hard body swim bait like a bull shad and I come up on a brush pile, I'm not going to throw that bull shad in that brush pile because I'll never get it back out. I'm going to grab a shaky head, or I'm going to grab a jig, or I'm going to grab something I can get into that brush pile and fish it more efficiently without getting hung up. And so that's one of the things. But it's mainly about confidence. If I lose confidence in a spot that I'm fishing, I change. I go somewhere else. If I lose confidence in the bait that I'm fishing, I change the bait up. But that felt really good. I must be coming through a rock, because that feels just like a rock. But anyway, so it's a confidence thing. And the thing that really changed me with that, pertaining to confidence, is I got to the point where I could quickly recognize that I'd lost confidence in something, and I quickly change. I don't beat a dead horse for very long, and that's one thing that we as anglers typically do. We'll lose confidence in something. We're like, nah, I don't really want to tie something else up. I don't want to tie another knot. I don't want, I don't really want to move and go somewhere else. And you'll sit there and you'll beat a dead horse, and before you know it, you've been sitting there for a half hour, 45 minutes to an hour, basically wasting your time. So get to the point where you recognize that you've lost confidence and change immediately, and be willing to do it, and you'll find that you'll catch more fish, I promise. So one thing I typically do when the conditions are tough like this, I got slick, calm water, I got sunny bluebird skies, a few little wispy clouds in the sky, but pretty much bluebird skies. The thing that I typically will do, especially when the water's slick like this, is I go slow and I fish closer to the bottom. I just slow way down, which is a pain in the neck, because I could spend 30 minutes on a spot and there not be any fish on there, but I still want to cover the spot thoroughly. Just don't want to do it quick, because the bass really aren't good. They're going to get a good look at the bait. I want something as natural as possible, but they're not going to chase a bait so much when the water's slick like this. You need that wind on the water to break up the surface and make it more difficult for them to see, and they react more to those moving reaction baits. So, ooh, that might be a fish. See what I mean? Yep. Oh, I missed him. I knew he didn't have it good. He felt like a little one. Try that again. Reset. Just felt like he just picked up the back end and was swimming with it. That bait was right on the bottom, so the bass actually picked that bait up off the bottom. So that's a clue that they will bite, but they are close to the bottom. Oh, there he is. Got him. Yeah, I told you he was a small one. Get a hold of you before you stick a fin in me. First fish of the day. See, look, okay, I want you to see something. This is really cool. Look at that fin right there. All right. Never mind, that's not cool. That's poop. I thought it was mud. He pooped on himself. I'll put him back in the water. Go get cleaned off. Wipe yourself, dude. But anyway, so I pulled up on this point and I slowed down with a worm is all I did. This is a cutter worm. Really clear worm. I probably wouldn't typically in this water clarity. It's probably 8 foot, or about 6 foot clarity. But typically I'd throw something like a green pumpkin. But anyway, boy, he tore that worm up. I thought it was mud. What I was trying to tell you was that when you bring a fish up and it's dirty on the bottom, it means it's been sitting in the mud, belly down in the mud for a long time. And typically you find that in the wintertime bass, where they just their belly is just kind of picked up a little bit of mud. The slime has gotten some mud in it and stuff like that. That was not mud. Oops. All right, let's see what I've learned from that bite. I'm gonna go through all the little details and try to figure out if I can duplicate this somewhere else. First of all, right on the bottom, I'm pulling it through what feels like rock. Not a lot of rock, but there is some rock right there, and that's what I'm pulling it through. The reason I know it's not sticks or not bushes is because it just doesn't feel like it's harder than that. These tungsten weights really do help to feel that, but it's harder than that. Plus, if I get it, bring it up to something to get snagged on, and I shake it and then I drop it, and it doesn't fall like it would if it was on a limb or something like that. So rock pile or on a hard spot on the point, and they're on the downwind side of this point. I don't think that makes a difference. I think that they're on a flat part of the point is what that fish was. Worked really slow. Bait worked on the bottom. No action, just dragging it is all it is. So and he didn't pick it up very heavy. You know, I missed him the first time, and it may not even have been the same fish. But so they're not super aggressive, and that's what I know. So I'll hit another couple of points here in a little bit and see if I can't duplicate it. All right, so let me show you the color of the worm. I can't remember what it's called, but it's really clear for a worm, that is. I mean, you can see lots of daylight through it. And I've got the tail dipped in JJ's Magic. Give it a little bit of chartreuse, and then just a nice clear type worm. Good for clear water. This water's a little bit stained, so it's kind of borderline. I probably ought to switch to a green pumpkin, but hey, it caught a fish. All right, let's change baits real quick. I'm gonna try something. So since they seem to be kind of in a funky mood, let's grab my drop shot. But because that fish was so close to the bottom, look, I got about a 24-inch leader. But because that fish was so close to the bottom, I'll pop the weight off. I'm gonna go to a lighter leader. Look, I leave the tag line or tag end in, so I can make it a longer leader if I need to. And that's why these drop shot weights that have the little snap swivels are so good. But anyway, all right, let's drop it down there and see what happens. So the reason I want to try a drop shot is because I'm able to keep the bait in that spot for longer, so I can fish it even slower than I can a Texas rig. So I'm bringing it up to the rocks till I feel those rocks with the sinker, and I just I'll let the bait go slack, and I'll pop it up and shake it and let the bait go slack. And when I go to let it go slack, the bait falls to the bottom. Of course, it's got the hook that's weighting it and everything else. And this is a Magnum shaky head from Zoom is what I'm throwing. Just a straight tail worm, but it's got a lot of action in it. I don't think it's going to be too big for these fish. Might be for the small ones though. That's definitely gravel or rock or something. Huh, maybe that was just one lone fish. Or they're just cruising around. I fully expect to get bit here with this thing. But you never know. You don't know what's going on down there. I tell you, I used to have one of those AquaView underwater cameras, and it was one of the original ones years and years ago, and I got rid of it after 6 months. It was awesome to be able to put it down there and see the fish and everything else, but I'd drop a drop shot down and I'd see these giant spotted bass, or largemouth, but mainly spotted bass, coming up and looking at it, and swim away. And I get so frustrated. It's like, I don't even want to freaking know what's down there. I just want to fish and not get frustrated with knowing that I had my bait this close to a giant fish and it didn't bite. So it was letting me know how bad I sucked, that's for sure. So I sold it. All right, so this is a really cool point. I want you guys to look. I'm going to use this camera back here, but I want you to look. I got a road bed that comes straight out. It comes on this point. I'm actually got my boat anchored down right in the middle of this road bed. I'm 15 feet deep, and so this point comes way out. It's a nice long main lake point. I see one little tree right here that's sticking up, and then I'm sure there's other bushes and other trees along the edge of this this road bed. I don't think there'll be any bushes right in the center, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing. But the one thing that you do know about a road bed is that, especially in new lakes, is you know, for 20, 25, 30 years, that road bed is going to be a hard bottom, and there should be fish in the area. Whether I can get them to bite or not, it's a whole different story. But anyway, this is a key spot, a road bed, which ends up being like an avenue for the bass to move deep and shallow. But the biggest thing is it's a hard bottom, and it's got edges, and it's got a ditch, you know, on both sides of it. It's just got a great places to hide and ambush bait fish. So I'm gonna fish it really hard. All right, so bait selection is one thing I haven't gone over yet. When the bite is tough, my confidence baits switch from being something that has a lot of kick or a lot of action to something that doesn't have hardly any action at all. It's something that doesn't have a kicking tail. Straight tail worms is almost always what I go to. If I'm fishing a jig, I go to a jig that has a trailer that doesn't have any action. But typically it's going to be a straight tail worm, you know, shorter maybe, you know, 7 inches or shorter. And then I don't typically change from that. You know, even a ribbon tail is almost too much action when the bite's super tough. And if I was fishing, you know, a high pressured lake, it'd be the same thing. I'd go to light line, I'd go to smaller baits, I'd go to straight tail worms with hardly any action. I'd do all, you know, I'd imply the action on it, and I would fish super slow. Just the way it is. That's my confidence thing. It isn't what everybody does, but that is definitely what I go to, and I get bites. You know, I don't typically get a lot of bites because the bite's tough anyway, but I get bites and I'm able to catch fish. You know, a Ned rig's another good thing. A do nothing bait, you know. That's what I'm talking about right there, folks. Slow and steady. Didn't even feel the bite, he was just on it. Yeah, let's get him in. He's a good fish. Oh, I'm telling you guys, slow, way down when the conditions are tough. Of every piece of structure and cover that you can, and you'll catch big ones. And this is a big one for this lake. This is a new lake. This is a good one. Fat, happy. Oh. Well, I hope you learned something from this video, and like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out of the water, go out and catch some fish, and have a great day. We'll see you. Bye, big girl. Future 10-pounder.